All right. With this being called the marvelous journey, there's one question, burning question that may be on everyone's mind. I'm here to answer that today. I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for asking. So for why we started with the Batman, I guess I should give you a bit of backstory on how, like, the events that kind of led to, like, where we are today. I think this will happen in, probably about March. When I used to live in Arizona, passed by this one place on my way to work, like, every day. For whatever reason, one day I decided to actually, like, go and check it out. I was just kind of bored on, like, 8 o'clock at night. Decided to go check it out. Turns out it was a movie theater. I saw, in, like, I think it was, like, 2 days, some movie called The Batman is coming out. Well, at least at the time, I didn't really watch movies. In fact, I think at that time I hadn't seen a movie in, like, 2 years. Not watching movies, I definitely don't watch any, like, movie trailers or anything. So I had no idea that this Batman movie was coming out. But I saw, it's coming out in 2 days. And I passed by this place on my way to work every day. Why not? One day I'm gonna just come up here and watch a movie. I looked online, turns out they were gonna be selling tickets at about 8:04 on day of release. Did not get there on day of release, but I did get there, I think, either a day or 2 later. Just straight from work, went into the movie theater, bought the ticket. I think I missed a few of the commercials or whatever at the start of the movie, but you know, whatever.
No one cares about the commercials.
Yeah. Just on a whim, no prep, walked into the Batman. And I was completely blown away. I mean, at the time, it was my favorite movie. Like, not that that's saying much, because I don't watch movies, but it just completely blown away by what I just saw. It was at that point that I realized, well, now that I'm an adult and I have money, I can just go watch movies. Like, I'm not going to tell you my age, but I'm not, like, that old. So... I'm still at that point in my life where a significant portion of my life was me not having money and not having agency to go out and do things. But now I do. So I set out to go and watch some of the superhero movies that I had missed previously. And it was at this point I realized, one, everything I'd been hearing about the DC Universe movies was kinda awful. Two, compared to some of the things I actually did want to see, which were Marvel movies, there's actually not much in terms of DC Universe. I do know that there is some, like, cartoons and stuff. Maybe someday do a journey on that. But it was at this point I decided I am going to set out and catch up on all the movies that I had missed.
And that's pretty big thing.
Mm-hmm.
I thought when I heard we were gonna watch the MCU, I was very confused at the beginning, like, why we're watching the Batman first.
Well, because mostly because there's not much in terms of the DC Universe. There's also one other specific reason that we'll get to when we get to that movie. But this is the marvelous start to the marvelous journey. This is the catalyst, if you will, for why I decided to start the marvelous journey.
I understand that, and I can respect that start.
Alright. So, before we get to what we've actually written down, I want to start something I did in Later Man Alpha, or Marvelous Journey Alpha, whatever. The before the cameras. The wiki skim. What do you know about Batman?
What I knew about Batman before I watched the Batman, the show, I knew quite a lot. I knew that Batman and Superman in the beginning were actually kind of best friends in, like, the comics. And it was like, there's, like, a whole bunch of random stuff they go on adventures. It was like, the Batman has faced so many villains that some of them are just silly. Like
Kite Man,
Mayonnaise Man, I think, or was it Condiments?
Oh, Jesus.
Or was it Condiments Man?
I mean, both of those sound valid.
There's so many villains that I've heard of, and I'm like, these exist.
They do indeed.
And I'm like, and then I heard about Batman's actual villains, and I'm like, oh, and I mainly remember the Joker, Bane.
Actual villains.
Well, more popular villains.
Okay. Because, I mean, technically Mr. Freeze is on that list, but for some reason, Mr. Freeze just kind of stuck in the fans' hearts.
Yeah, Mr. Freeze is very popular. Not as popular as probably like the Joker, but he's very popular.
Ooh, sorry.
That's okay. Going through all the Batman movies, I have not seen any other Batman movies. I was mainly familiar with them what I heard in the comics, what I've heard in like cartoons when I was little, and that's about it.
Most of what I know about Batman is like what his general MO is. So I know that he's kind of sort of a detective.
In DC, he's called the world's greatest detective.
I can believe that, actually. I think most of what I know about Batman can be summed up by that one panel, series of panels. It's like Wonder Woman has Superman and Batman in the Lasso of Truth, and she asks them, "What are your names?" And Superman is, like, Kal-El from Krypton, etc. And then Batman is just like, "I'm Batman." Which is, it says a lot about who Batman actually is. Like, the idea that Bruce Wayne is actually the mask, whereas most superheroes wear a mask to protect their identity, Batman's mask is Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne died in that alleyway. From then on, it was just, we've been watching Batman this entire time. Which is, it's such a cool idea to me. It's hard to explain.
I see why you do that. I say, when I think about Bruce Wayne and, like, Batman, I think they're the same character still.
Mm.
Batman just can distinguish each character as one of the same now. There's no difference.
Alright.
So you can just answer that truthfully.
Alright. More wiki skim, though. Because he's pretty important. The Riddler. What do you know about the Riddler?
Oh, I've heard a lot about the Riddler. The Riddler usually is wearing all green and a hat.
Yeah, it's the classic look, yeah.
And with the question mark on it. He's known to cause riddles with explosions and stuff. Usually the Riddler is not only motivated by Batman.
Mm.
He's usually motivated at first by getting revenge on something and doing riddles as like a little challenge. The Batman interests him after Batman figures out all the riddles.
Okay.
Usually. The Batman doesn't usually play the Riddler's game, or tries not to. He doesn't see it as a game. I heard of this multiple choice comic where if you follow the path of a normal Riddler, you're playing the Riddler's game and you will always end in failure. Mm-hmm. But if you flip the page and go out of order, you can actually beat the Riddler.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so with the missing pages, which you don't usually look at.
It sounds kind of strange, considering, like, I call this the wiki skim, and technically all the answers I want, I could just, like, actually read the wiki. But one thing that's always confused me about the Riddler is why he would leave clues, things like that. And, like, so far I've chalked it up to ego. And I guess that's, like, technically still true. I'm glad this movie kind of addresses that a little bit. I've also somewhat hated the fact that his name is Edward Nygma, and one of my names is the Enigma, and I keep getting questions about it. Like, I must be a Riddler fan. No, not really. He's, like, cool and all, but
it just kind of happened.
It's unfortunate. That being said, I wouldn't mind being a fan of this Riddler. And then 4 more. Catwoman, Commissioner Gordon, Falcone, and the Waynes in general.
What I know about Catwoman, first off, she's been all over the place in the DC universe. Mm-hmm. But she's mainly stayed the same. She's sometimes a lover to Batman, sometimes she's just a rival, sometimes she figures out Batman's real identity, sometimes she doesn't. It just depends on the genre. She's always been a thief, as far as I know.
I would hope so.
It's mainly her personality what changes, not like what she does. This Catwoman, one line, like, some lines, her lines felt like, were just but some lines were really good. I felt like, but some lines were not. I felt like they could done better. But no movie's perfect, so.
Well, before we get to the movie, though, like, just what you know about the character in general.
Yeah,
so,
Catwoman.
And then Gordon, Falcone, Wayne's, any of those? No. Anything?
Wayne's, they basically always die. The father and mother always die. The killer has been expanded on, basically, for Batman a lot of the time. It went with the Falcones this time, which is interesting. I don't know much about the Falcones outside of this. But in this way, did they kill him? Did they kill the parents? Did he not? We don't know. But what really surprised me was how they actually went into more detail into like who Bruce's father was and mother was, because they don't usually go into too much detail on that.
This movie decided that they were actually important.
Oh, they're always important. They're just not.
Well, I mean, like, important, like, who they are is important, as opposed to, like, them dying is important.
Yeah.
Can't say I know too much about the last three, and most of what I know about Catwoman is her looks, and, like, a few artists on Twitter, but...
Oh, gosh.
Alright.
It's Twitter. It's artists on Twitter and Catwoman. That's not. I am worried about.
You're not a fan.
I'm not that. It's depending on what type of artists.
I'm not gonna go into further detail because this is not a Twitter review series. But let me know if you're up for that. So I've seen this movie twice now. But you let me know that this was your first time watching this movie, which is perfect because it's not quite the same because we didn't watch it in a theater, but you essentially got the experience that I did from what it looks like. Also, I glance over every so often and you were just writing up a storm. So I want to know what you've got written down, but just do me a favor, don't
say it by word by word.
Well, that and don't give me the novel version of the movie, which is what I was worried you were going to do. Just whatever you want to say about this movie.
Well, I thought the start was a little was not unusual. So I thought they were going for the detective theme right away. I could tell that because literally the first scene is a murder, and that's like, oh yeah, the tape I don't recognize from any other show, edition.
Oh, like his tape face?
Yeah. I have not recognized that. So I didn't know who exactly he was at first. And then when they got more details on it and like who, like the planes and like, I'm like, oh, yeah. Now I know who it is.
Yeah.
But then I realized, this is another Batman's first encounter with the Riddler, basically. So I was wondering like how this was going to go. I was a little interested, like the politicians thing, what was brought up. Like the vigilante was not seen as good at first, which is kind of normal in Batman. Batman's not seen as a good character all the time, sometimes he's seen as a good one. It just depends on police person who does it. Like some shows, he teams up with a certain member of the police, and that's like for a little bit. And some shows, it's not even Gordon.
Alright.
I've watched one show with that at least, so I know that happened once. And it changed over time. Usually figuring out Batman's identity is a like big deal. It's never figured out yet, so
I forgot. That is one thing I do know about the Riddler is that in a lot of like continuities, he is the one to figure out Batman's identity.
Yeah, but some continuities, he is not the one who figured out Batman's identity. Sometimes if other villains, if they hear that someone figured out the Batman's identity, like the Joker, in one show, he actually gassed the people who figured out his identity, said, only one's going to figure out the identity is me. So, that's, like, I was interested. I was like, is he actually going to figure out his identity in this one? Because I have never seen actually a Batman show. Well, I've seen one, a game, where his identity is revealed. But, apparently, I didn't see that. A politician point of view, I was like, okay, let's see how well they do this up, because it's always been a mixed bag whenever politics is brought into a Batman. It's more about law. It didn't go too much into it, so I'm like, it's fine. But if they brought like I can see what they're going for. I wonder how like they're gonna go forward from this movie after its end.
Mm-hmm.
I also noticed Batman's armor is resilient to bullets, which is usually not a thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Batman usually is just really good at predicting movements and is like really good at doing stuff like that.
That seems really damn. Let's see, because that seems like such a useful thing to have.
That's some of his armors. When he's dealing with Talon thugs, he doesn't need it. But if it's like Superman or Wonder Woman, he has things like that.
And also typically in like the media portrayals of him that I've seen mostly, especially in like video games. There's I have seen the Dark Knight trilogy, which we may need to get to.
Yeah.
Typically either resistant or completely bulletproof.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
Yeah, and like that's usually the upgrade he gets later.
Okay.
I think. But in the beginning, no. I feel like Batman's action was a little weaker than most incarnations of Batman.
Okay.
He's not as jumping around, flying thing, but this is probably his live action. His punches are a little bit weaker, I feel like, because usually when his punches, they're like full fist, not just pop, pop.
Okay.
Yeah, so
I'm gonna put a pin in that because we may get to that in later in my notes.
So when I saw when the police call him in, and I realized like the conflict, I was like really interested. Like I wanted to know more about how this relationship got built. Did he even break in at first?
Oh yeah, because they never actually showed like Commissioner Gordon and Batman meeting.
Yeah. Like I was like, how did this relationship get built? How did they get so close? How did he trust enough to go to the crime scene? It's been 2 years apparently. So that's what I was like, how did this happen? He doesn't care about his business in this one very much. And that's unusual. He usually tries to continue on his father's legacy.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah, in this one, he doesn't seem to care at all. He just seems to be caring about like being Batman. Batman and Bruce Wayne are like one and the same.
Okay. All right. I see it now.
So I was like, that's interesting. And like the governor said that you can't get in contact with him. It would be good if you supported me in this.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So I was like, oh wow, this is a different Batman. So that was interesting for me. I find it interesting how the Riddler uses. I find it interesting that he used the UPS street drive, like using like instead of just normal riddles, like would like to tell you riddles like to stall. Instead, he gives him riddles to try to solve, so you can figure out what the Riddler is actually doing, and like UPS G drives and stuff like that to find where he's located in his online website. The Penguin has changed. He's still very rich and stuff like that, but he actually works underneath someone instead of just being his own boss.
We'll circle back to that as well.
I find it interesting that he was unconscious and they didn't just take off the mask when Batman was.
Yeah, I found that kind of weird too. But I guess we do need to have a movie, but they waited till he was waking up to try and do something.
So I just thought, like, I was wondering if all the cops are corrupt.
No, actually.
Yeah, and I was like wondering that, like, in the middle of the movie, and like no, like, how big is this corruption go? I'm like, okay, that makes more sense because it's usually a grayish thing in places. I was like wondering why the cops were so against Batman in this part.
Well, I mean,
the biggest drug bust might be a fraud. I don't think that's ever explained later. But if it was a fraud,
I think you missed it because you were writing down notes. There was a cover up, and because like certain people still wanted to continue it, and those people got into power, and so they used their power to try and cover it up so that they can continue operating.
Oh. I love the scene of the Penguin running from the Batmobile. I wrote down like a specific sentence in my notes, like Penguin running from the Batmobile. Can we talk about that?
Yes, we will. Oh, we will.
I found it interesting that the next victim was Bruce Wayne. And I was like, is Bruce Wayne did something like in his job, and that's why he doesn't care about it? But no, it's because of something his father did. which is what I was interested in. Because, like, oh, they're actually going into the family, like I said earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Bruce Wayne family was part of did something criminal. That's also notes in there. Alfred knew. That's what I was interested in. Actual conflict between Alfred and Batman. Usually it's Batman being stubborn and Alfred helping him.
Mm-hmm.
Not Alfred not telling Batman something important.
I don't know if lying is the word I would use.
No, Alfred knew, not lying, but
Oh, okay.
Alfred knew.
Hmm.
And he didn't tell it. Usually Batman being stubborn and Alfred telling him that he needs to lighten up. Not Alfred knew something.
And just did not tell
Batman.
Yeah. Alright.
I like the ending, what his father actually did when Alfred told him that. Alfred in the hospital scene. How evil the Raven was. Because, like, you get to see, like, you can see an actual person being, well, you can see an actual mob boss being this cruel. So, like...
The Falcon?
The Falcon, yeah. I wrote Raven for some reason.
I think the Raven is an actual character in Batman as well.
Yeah, maybe that's why I got confused. The riddle is only revealed at the end of the movie, and Batman doesn't stop every single thing.
Yes.
The Riddler doesn't know who... No one ever figures out who Batman is. Which is obviously Bruce Wayne. He even talks it out.
Well, I mean, the Riddler does, but...
Yeah. Really doesn't. He says Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne. He doesn't actually know who he is.
Well, I'll put a pin in that, because I'm pretty sure he does, based on, like, the other stuff he left. But... Alright.
The final scenes with the Batman. Batman thinking he can fix the city still. After everything. Is such a Batman thing to do.
Decided to become a symbol of hope.
Yeah. Batman was always in. He is a realist, basically, Batman will say. He said crime will always return to the city. I think he just wants the city not to, well, have supervillains.
Alright.
Just be normal, I think. Well, and he's going to continue fighting crime as long as there is crime. Or until his real identity is proven.
Alright.
That's what makes Batman Batman. And that's basically the end of my notes, except for the ones you asked me to write down.
Alright. We'll get to that in a second. We'll do record from right there. Also, we are going to have to talk, or I'm going to have to talk a little bit louder. Sorry, there's a heater in the background in the event that I can't remove it. Some light ASMR for you guys. Alright. So, well, now I'm going to still save it for a little bit afterwards. But I did another wiki skim, specifically on this movie and how it was made, which might answer a few questions, or questions/notes that you had written down.
Yeah.
First, I find it interesting that unlike a lot of other superhero movies that I've seen, this one banks on the fact that you already know who Batman is. You know how, like, most movies, like, they kind of go into the origin of, like, who this character is. Like, you know, you see the character start from zero and then become a hero over time.
Yeah.
This one, and I think a few other movies within DC specifically, they start banking on the fact that you already know who Batman, or who the character is. In this case, Batman. And I'm not sure how to feel about that. Batman has already begun. I think in this specific instance makes the movie better, because we're not wasting time, like, figuring out who, Batman is. Maybe it's just because I'm used to it. It feels weird.
That's why I thought the intro was a little weird to me.
I guess Batman is one of those few characters that, yeah, you can get away with that. If you don't know who Batman is, it's not that hard to figure out anyway.
He's everywhere.
Yeah.
He's a joke and meme on the internet sometimes, too.
Yeah.
So, you can get a general gist of that.
He is one of, like, the pillars of superheroes in general. Though I haven't actually seen a whole lot of superheroes based specifically on Batman, which is kind of strange.
I've seen a few, and they're not like Batman.
It's just hard to hard to capture the essence of Batman. Gotham politics. I actually kind of wish they leaned into it more, but I do like the fact that they it's like a world building thing. They actually go into the politics of this cesspool of a city. Although, for what they've shown, it's kind of generic. But cool nonetheless. Also, I mentioned earlier that I wouldn't mind being a fan of this Riddler. The Riddler is scary in this movie. He does some Jokerish behavior, but he is scary nonetheless. What do you think?
I think he is terrifying, honestly.
Yes.
Because he's always been scary because how much he sees this as a game.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why Batman never tries to play by his game. Because he knows if he plays by Riddler's game, he's going to lose.
Oh, yeah. Maybe it's just because I haven't seen too much of Riddler, but like everything that I have seen of him, he's like a joke. And if he's not a joke, he's like one of those like mid-boss villains. He's never the main guy.
I like how you saw most of the other plot, and then the Riddler shows up.
Yes. Like, partway through the movie, or when I was in the theater, I kind of forgot that this movie was about getting the Riddler. And then Falcone died, and I was like, oh yeah, the Riddler! He's still here! I do also like the fact that his actions are based off of something else that we'll get into later. But he is still the Riddler. He has riddles, although they are very politically motivated.
Very, very. That's a different. Usually it's just riddles just to prove his superiority.
Batman's arc in this movie. So first off, I've always been fascinated by the idea of a hero using fear as his superpower. I don't know how much you remember. He explicitly names that he doesn't just put the symbol out in the sky, as, a signal for him. It's also a warning for criminals.
Yeah. He's gonna be that's a very good point. People always fear the Batman in the shows. I like how they put that, like what that actually means.
We actually see we see people who aren't going to be hit by Batman looking up in the sky and going, "Oh shit, I need to get out of here." and then they look at the shadow. It's shot like a horror movie. They look at the shadows and they're like, "Is he here? Is that him? Time to get away."
I wish there were. I wonder if they're gonna, like, next movie possibly go into fake Batmans, because there has been some shows where there's been fake Batmans trying to copy his legacy, and it usually ends horribly for them, or they bring up interesting points about Batman's psychology, like no killing and stuff.
Oh, and what I was saying earlier, Batman's arc. I don't know what to call it. I want to call it a theory, but I don't know if it's exactly a theory. He starts as vengeance and becomes hope. Like, mostly because the consequences of being vengeance kind of get to him.
Yeah, I understand that. Vengeance doesn't usually end well.
It's kind of grown on me now for like two very specific reasons, and I even mentioned this in my original Batman viewing. The costume. So what do you think about Batman's mask?
It's always been okay. It's never. I always thought Batman's clothes were they represent the character properly, but other than that, it's just Batman. So
what this movie made me realize about why I typically don't like the live action Batman mask specifically is that in like Batman cartoons and like games and stuff, Batman's eyes are typically white, like all white. You don't actually see his eyes. Like maybe the Arkham series, you get to see his eyes, and like that's also been kind of weird to me. But like that's specifically why it's always the fact that you can't see his eyes and you can't see his emotions actually made him. It made him, I don't know if cooler is the word I would use to describe it.
Made him more
more mysterious, more, poker faced, what have you. I've always been put off by it, but I think this movie gave me a reason to actually be okay with it. There are times where seeing Batman's emotions and how he reacts to things is kind of the point. specifically towards the end, where I think I have it written down. That's one of my notes, and I'll circle back to it. You probably remember the scene. He's beaten the ever-loving mess out of random number 542. And then I think it's like Commissioner Gordon asks him, "Who are you?" And he's like, "Me? I'm Vengeance." And he just gives the look. Which is, that look single-handedly saved the costume for me. Like, okay, you know what? Yes, you earned the eyes. Not that it's my opinion on whether or not you should have eyes, but...
I remember that. I never actually thought about it that much. I usually focus on the facial expressions, like on Oliver Giles sometimes. On anime cartoons, and I usually focus on like the full face in live action. I never actually noticed it too much.
Yeah, I noticed it because, one, a lot of the characters that I actually draw, I've noticed, don't have pupils, which gives them a very certain look. And it also makes it kind of hard for me to give them expressions. Two, eyes are the windows to the soul. And you can do a lot of expressions with eyes alone. I'm an artist.
Yeah. I tried drawing before and I'm still not good at it. I'm okay.
You mentioned earlier the police. I'm super happy with the way, like, maybe not so much the police are portrayed, but the way that Batman interacts with the police. So, like, if you really think about it, somebody like Batman is not something you want patrolling the streets at all.
No.
Like, I mean, yes, he is a good person, and yes, technically you need Batman to patrol the streets in a world like this. But in a world where we have cops, for whatever you think of them, something like Batman is antithetical to that. He acts above the law most of the time, although he does cooperate with the police quite a bit. And I'm so glad that not all the police, most of the police do not trust this man.
Yeah, that's true, because there is some actual vigilante, like, tell me if this goes out of intended. Actual, like, people who dress in superhero costumes to capture, like, people and, like, go within the law to do it. There's, like, little vigilante things within the law, and I'm like, oh, I didn't know you can actually do this. You can't, like, spider. There's no, like, nothing like that. No superpowered gadgets. You just have to go within the law. There's actually some people like that.
I'll go on that tangent with you. I forgot his name, and I guess it doesn't matter too much anymore because he turned out to be corrupt. But I do remember hearing the story of, like, this one black guy who dressed up in costume and caught a lot of, like, drug people. I think he first acted without the police and then eventually started getting the police involved. Someone in the comments will let me know who it is. This guy also eventually became a drug dealer himself.
Oh gosh, most of the people I've not heard of that, but like most of the people are like people who dealt with it, because like there was once a like Spectre I heard who didn't have stable foundations, and that killed his daughter. So he's now catching people who are doing it for a quick buck, and then stable foundations. He got an entire Gregory and stuff just to catch them, and like and dresses up like a superhero. And other people who just spray pepper spray. I think NCIS. You know that show?
I mean, I've watched like a few episodes probably.
There was one episode where it actually went into this. It was really interesting. I don't know if it was like too accurate because I've never seen these people, but I know about them.
I'll have to see if I can find that guy later. Speaking of investigations, I'm so glad. Maybe it's just me. I think this is the first media in general I've seen where Batman is actually a detective. I know he's supposed to be, but this one you actually see him being a detective. He's actually solving crimes.
How many Batman shows have you watched?
I've seen a few cartoons.
Cartoons, okay. That makes more sense.
For what I understand, the cartoons are a lot better than most of the movies anyway.
Yeah, true.
But it's usually action focused. It's like, this guy is, I need to go meet this guy at this alley and beat him up, or his goons, or whatever. It's not like, alright, I need to follow this trail. I mean, I guess it's also the Riddler, so you kind of have to. Because this guy's, even he admits, nothing in the physical department. But he actually has to follow a series of clues to catch the killer.
Very true.
And he actually has to like investigate the scene. You know, he's actually a detective. I forget exactly what it was that you mentioned, but I'm also glad this movie shows the toll being Batman takes on him. It's like, I don't know if you caught it.
Yeah, I caught it.
Well, okay. So what am I about to say then?
He is like exhausted a little bit. He almost loses himself near the end, hitting the guy over and over and over, and like other stuff. Like when he goes to, I almost called him Raven again. The Hawk. Falcon. Yeah. He looks so defeated and stuff, and like there's other parts, but it takes a toll on him.
What I'm talking about specifically is every night he takes out the contact lenses because he actually just can't remember what it is that happened. He's so exhausted that he just can't remember. So he has to put those contact lenses in so he can, rest and then wake up and see what it is that actually happened.
Oh gosh. I remember that scene. I just didn't think
you weren't on the same wavelength.
Yeah,
I get it.
I wasn't on the same wavelength. I was more on the emotional breaking.
I mean that too. That's definitely something. Though it might also be the specific beating up part. Might also be like the drug he took.
I don't know what drug he took, but I think it caused.
Yeah, I
think it might have been adrenaline.
Which is they never actually explain it. He just has some drug.
Might be one of the toolkits we don't know about, because Batman just literally his Batcave. If you went to every tool Batman has ever used, it would look like a supervillain's random test lab. There's a random giant penny in almost every movie. It goes back to one of his first villains, I think, which didn't come back.
What was it?
I don't remember because it was like one of his first heists, and I don't remember which villain it was.
Yeah. Because
there's so many villains in Batman. Also, Gotham. Literally just crime city.
Well, speaking of Gotham, I don't know about you, but after this movie, I want more Bruce Wayne. I mean, I don't know if I'd do a whole movie with Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't mind a movie with mostly Bruce Wayne.
That would be nice, yeah. See what
I really love the way that they depicted Bruce Wayne in this movie.
Bruce Wayne, some people might disagree, because usually Bruce Wayne is
charismatic and like outgoing somewhat.
Yeah, somewhat. This Bruce Wayne,
he's a secluded loner.
Yeah. He does not know how to like talk very much. He knows how to protect people, but he doesn't really have a social life.
It's so interesting though.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Like, he's a loner.
I do have the chase scene written down, and this is about where on my notes that I have it written down. Is there anything you wanted to say about this chase scene, or have you already gotten it out?
The chase scene, I was thinking the Penguin might get away at the end.
I was not, but
it would be an interesting twist, I thought.
Can't escape Batman.
True. That's a very small list of people who have escaped Batman.
It's hard to describe why I love this scene so much. It may just be like a really good scene. Like, that's just it. It's just really good.
My main thing is, like, Penguin costs so much damage. Like, oh my gosh, that's going to be have the police wrapped up for like a couple days. They definitely know where Batman is located right now.
This movie also has like some of the coolest shots. So the chase scene, ending of it, he's, walking out of the flames. And then he just like... no words. He just kind of leans down
and looks at
the penguin.
The penguin. I'm pretty sure the penguin peed himself.
Also, that hallway fight near the end where the lights are out and it's like the gunfire that actually illuminates everything is absolutely amazing.
Yeah,
a lot of like really cool shots of Gotham as well.
I like a lot of shots. What I think would be a cool next movie is Bruce Wayne having to try to help Gotham recover in financial damage.
Yes. That would be great, actually.
And then you can see, like, the looters actually trying to loot the place, where Batman's trying to fix, where Bruce Wayne is trying to figure out plans to recover the city.
All right.
while the looting is happening.
I have something else written down. I want to circle back to that in a second, though.
Okay.
There's a very specific scene in this movie that might be disturbing to anyone that has not. Well, I mean, if you're listening to this and you haven't seen The Batman, what are you doing? But there's a very specific scene would put people quite on edge. And I was so happy to figure out I was not the only one. I'm pretty sure you remember when Falcone was about to strangle Catwoman.
Yeah, I remember that.
All right, and I remember like looking over and you just being like, "Oh gosh," and I was like silently cheering because I was like, "Yes, I'm not the only one." There's just something about that scene that absolutely twisted a knife in me, and I don't know why.
Oh, it's probably the way he was talking. Honestly, the way he's talking, the visuals, how she took him off the first time, but then he got back on. That's intense, and I really like the scene after that. Batman stops her from just killing him.
Well, that's Batman.
Yeah, Batman is just like, no, it will consume you, and he just knows he has to stop her.
Because like I've seen people get dismembered in movies before. I've seen people end up in like their bones ripped out inside, specifically a whale's guts. I've seen a lot of like really messed up stuff in movies before, but for some reason it's this one that's like, ooh, I'm not comfortable at all.
Yeah, those are special effects mainly, and
I hope so.
Those are mainly special effects, and then the thing you're seeing is mainly real, so you can like realish shot. So you can...
Oh, okay. So you're saying you think this one was not special effects. Like she was actually like somewhat under pressure on her neck.
Not too much, but like she was good at acting, and like this scene really showed what it would look like. So you
could be strangled.
So you could actually feel in your brain actually.
Yeah. Okay.
And not like something super special effect, just blood and gore for no reason.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that does make a bit more sense, because at the end of it, you could also see, like, the red line on her neck.
Yeah, you could. It's more real. It's more show.
Like some very... Or if this was, like, some sort of special effects, they were, like, they knocked it out of the park.
Yeah.
Because good lord.
That was...
For context, everyone says they cry during the first few moments of Up. And I was very confused for, like, a few years as to why. I don't think I've never cried in the theater. I think I've cried at one movie, but I've never felt something like this before.
Sorry, you have different like emotional reactions to that. That was mainly for people who like being seen about. If I don't mind going off tangent.
Yeah, go ahead.
That series was meant to like show emotional response to like loss and what's common and how it's lost and how people don't get to say those words, but people have had experience with before. You know them for so long and then they're
gone. Okay.
Yep.
All right. I guess it does make sense. I was a lot younger at the time when I first saw it too.
Yeah.
And then as I grew older, I'd already seen it before, so it wasn't much of a surprise.
That's why this emotional response, you've seen it when older, you can fully comprehend what's happening. And it's just like seeing an actual recording of something happening.
Okay.
Doesn't mean you'll feel emotional response for everything else. Some people can't, for animation, can't get as big investment because their brain is just automatic. Like, this is not happening, none of this is real, and like all times. And only when live action happens it does. Sometimes it's the opposite. Live action can't get anything, and it has to be like right in front of you. But in like animation, it makes it easier. So it depends on the people.
You know what? Now that I think about it, there actually is one other time that I felt sort of like this. And it was also when I was a lot younger. You know who Jason Todd is, who eventually became the Red Hood?
A little bit.
You know how the events that inspired him to become the Red Hood?
No.
Okay. I'm not gonna say it because we may have to go through a journey on that as well. But it's some messed up stuff. And probably not something I should have seen as a kid. But that was the only other time I can think of when I felt something like this.
Okay.
Coincidentally enough, another Batman movie, I think it was, Yeah, that is just like a short animation. Riddler's motivations in this movie.
He's definitely crazy.
Well, like, what do you feel about his motivations in particular, though?
Shows how I can see someone being that crazy doing this.
Yeah, it's
disturbing.
It's what's so disturbing is like technically people like this already exist and we already know about them.
Yeah.
I don't know about you.
I've heard about people like this and I'm like, oh god.
I don't know about you, but like the entire like ending like Batman versus the vigilante scene, there was only one thing on my mind. Mostly because it happened so recently. There's not a lot of parallels to January 6th. I gotta say.
There's some people, but I don't think they actually hurt anyone.
It's a very like this is a very hyperbolic version of it.
No, I not quite. I think there's some like the protests were burning things down a while ago. We're also like that too. It was like both sides, I'd say, but I think. But one was more extreme than the other. This show is obviously more extreme version of both of them, but you can see the difference.
Well, let me explain what I mean by it. It's not so much like the actions of the people at the event, but like the motivations behind it. I have to word this carefully because I'm trying to not sound like I'm in favor of the protest. There's a part of me that completely understands why it happened. If you really do believe that, you know, your entire life you've been wronged and you finally have an opportunity to do something about it, I don't know who wouldn't. Obviously, it's not like that. It's obviously a bit more complex than that. But there's a certain mindset that these people get into where there's someone else that explained this like very clearly. Like, all right, if you really do believe that these like politicians are like these Satan worshipping, baby killing, what else? You know, all the conspiracy things that they are. Why wouldn't you stop? Not to say that the Batman goes that extreme, but there's like in some ways it's kind of
well, I can let me try to think. Let me try to interpret. You're saying like people when you're I can't explain this.
All right. So it's like very clearly shown that because because Thomas Wayne died before he could actually finalize what the charity fund was going to, a bunch of other people that now run the city swooped in and took that money for their own purposes, and it's mostly due to those purposes that the city is the way it is. It's a very crime-ridden, it's, you know, life is bad for everyone, but it's especially bad for those orphans that charity was supposed to go to. Those people were very much wronged, and their entire life I don't know about their entire life, but they suffered because of it.
Mm-hmm.
You're essentially watching a bunch of rich people take money that was supposed to go to people in need and use it to ruin not only your life, but the life of the city around you, which is kind of gut-wrenching. And I can't imagine anyone in that situation who wouldn't try to do something to stop it. Now, obviously, it is a bit more complicated than that, and there's like some very specific things that make their actions wrong. But like maybe you at least understand what I'm getting at, right?
A little bit.
Okay.
But some of it I would disagree, but I'm not going to get into that. That would take an entire explanation, and we'll be here all day. And I'm not here to argue about politics. No, this is about a movie.
I'll find some way to like flub it, I guess. Sorry, something happened and we kind of lost our place.
Yep. So, do you want to talk about what makes a superhero movie?
So, actually, there is one more thing. You kind of got into it earlier. Oh, you know what? Actually, there's two things, because I forgot. There's one more thing I need to circle back to. But first, How do you think the characters were portrayed?
I think they were portrayed rather well. Some of them were changed a lot, but they were shown to be very well like what's in character.
Mm-hmm.
Except maybe some of the Batman, like Bruce Wayne parts, but Bruce Wayne was never the main appeal.
I would say that they were portrayed rather well, but as it turns out, I actually don't know too much about these characters. Not as much as I thought I did. I hate to throw you under the bus. Off air, we were talking about being getting canceled. And speaking of canceling, a bit of controversy around this movie. It's the same controversy that's been hitting basically any property ever lately. So there's 3 characters in this movie, or, well, 2, technically 3 characters in this movie that are the wrong color. Do you know who they are?
I remember that. I think I know that. I think the detective. I don't know all of them because I haven't paid attention to many sake.
Alright, Catwoman. Catwoman is by far the biggest one that people have, like, an issue with. And, first off, do you think it affected the movie? It's Commissioner Gordon is the person you're thinking of, by the way.
Commissioner Gordon, yeah. Catwoman, not too much, but she is appeared in other Marvel properties, not Marvel, DC properties.
That might get you canceled.
DC properties, and she was different, so I think it might be a part of that too, because like might have changed their actor. Some people are fan of actors, so. But that part, there was one line that kind of bothered me.
Oh, I think I have it written down too.
Yeah.
Let me know what that one line is.
White privilege?
Yes. It is.
That white line bothered me because they're criminals. They're criminals, and that I don't think there's any kind of like hierarchy in that. Unless you're like born into it.
I
don't think most of them weren't. Because like literally Catwoman, it was born to a leader criminal, and she was still ignored.
Well, alright. So, you did have a problem with that line, though.
Yeah.
Alright. As a lot of people did. Well, but before I go into that line, do you think it, like, the color of these actors, do you think it's like a diversity hire, or do you think these actors were good?
I think they were okay for this movie, yes.
Oh, okay. Alright. Good. I'm glad. I was so confused when I heard how much controversy there was over it. Also, I found out Catwoman in this movie actually looks a lot like Selena Kyle in a lot of the versions of the comics. Like, dead ass like Selena Kyle. Yeah. Which is crazy. Also, having hindsight being 2020, having seen the Dark Knight trilogy, this is just a much better Catwoman. Jesus, this is a much better Catwoman.
That one line was like my only problem with the movie, because I thought it was very unnecessary. It would drag politics into this, and you never want to drag politics into any movie.
I mean,
most of the time, okay?
Well,
because if you drag politics into too many movies, some people will not watch it, and you want the biggest audience you can get. I'm just looking at like what it is. That was my only problem. Like, that was unnecessary.
All right.
That was the only problem with it.
I mean, this movie kind of political, though, if you think about it.
Yeah, it did get political, but not like...
Quite literally, politics is the reason for the events of this movie.
Yeah. But my main thing is...
It's real-world politics that you're thinking of.
Yeah, real-world politics. Like, this... If you can make a comment on politics, I think
that's... Which this movie does.
Yeah, that movie does. But that was during an emotional scene. And I was thinking, like, during an emotional scene, that would take some people out of it. Like, saying that one word. And you want that thing to have... I would want that thing to have full impact, not just take anyone out of it. Will take some people out of it. Some people will say, like, that movie is good. It just would take some people out of it. And then there's also other sides, like, who think they're trying to cancel it. But no, it just takes... That line just takes everything out of that political. This takes everything in who's different, not political to some people, and some other people will just get overly excited about it.
All right. I hate to do this to you, but like, I think anyone who's like completely taken out of the movie because of that line is a baby. That includes you.
I was not taken completely out of the movie out of that line. I just thought it was unnecessary.
All right. It's because like I completely missed it the first time I watched it. Maybe it's because I'm not white. Like, sorry guys. As it turns out, I'm not white. I hate to ruin your dreams, hopes and dreams. Sorry, I'm not white. So so something like that doesn't affect me personally as much. But I found it such a... So like maybe this also explains why, because we've had like political discussions off air before, where you present something to me, it's like, hey, look, these people are upset or something about this thing, and I'm always like, well, is it really something to be upset about? And it's things like this that are why. Because like overall, even with that line in there, this movie was great.
I agree with that. I just like seeing the most epigonomics out of anything.
Yeah, I can understand like honestly taking the line out wouldn't affect the movie, and I honestly think it makes sense in the context of the movie, especially the Batman villains that are most portrayed in this movie. They are based on real people that do come from positions of privilege. Whether or not that's white privilege, we can like debate about, but it is undoubtedly positions of privilege. These are typically people who are rich, typically born rich. They're so far rich that they're kind of out of it, and that richness affects their personality to a degree. Historically, these people have been white, like unfortunately, but that is a discussion for a different channel, really. Yeah. But
yep.
All right, we're gonna move on, so we're not.
We might cut this out all.
Might cut. I don't. Damn, gotta drag me back into it.
No, let's not drag it back into it. Let's go into.
No, I have to. I have to let people know how I feel, okay. Especially because this is literally a podcast talking about how we feel. I don't think avoiding politics is the answer. It's not a good idea to ever avoid politics. I think it has, like, legitimately destroyed this country in particular, but oh well. Alright, we are moving on so that this doesn't become too long.
Okay.
We're going to answer the question that I asked you over Discord first, before I get into the final notes. So, what elements do you need to make a good superhero movie?
Let me go through those notes. You need villain or villains which have entertaining prospects, or interesting prospects at least, or thought provoking. You need something what can capture the audience attention at first.
Mm-hmm.
You need the hero to be challenged or show what's the main issue at the beginning or the end sometimes. So, if it's a movie, you want that to be established.
Explain that.
Basically, in movie structures, you want your main issue to be established somewhere early in the movie.
Mm.
If it's not established, like in the middle, that leaves you less runtime to go into that plot you want to go into.
Mm. Well, specifically how it, like you said something about like how the hero needs to
be challenged.
Yeah.
The hero needs to have an issue or a challenge they must overcome.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
You need your characters in the story to stay in character throughout the entire movie and not be like a different character all of a sudden. You need your character who says no killing and not suddenly just start killing people for no reason. You need Batman to be
Batman.
Yeah.
I can't. Not that that's not a good point. I can't think of any movie ever that has ever done something.
I've seen a movie do that before.
Can you think of an example?
Dragon Ball Evolution. That was a bad movie anyway. It's usually a bad movie. I was thinking like, what's a bad movie? What's a bad movie?
Yeah.
Example.
All right.
you need to establish your character very early on. Who your character is, what's their personality, so you can show more of that. If you don't establish your character and just make him like be a blank slate the whole movie, just doing stuff, that can ruin your plot if it depends on.
Okay.
You need a beginning, middle, and end, not just like halfway point in your movie just to be a cliffhanger.
I mean, that's also like something you would just need to make a good movie in general, not specifically a superhero movie.
Now, there's some movies where I've seen like, what is it? Not Hunger Games. I think it's maybe Maybe it's Hunger Games. Like, they split the movie into two. The last movie.
Oh. So, that's actually happened to a few franchises.
Yeah.
And
it can work, but sometimes it doesn't.
Well, I'm not sure if I agree with that one, because a problem with, like, from what I've heard of, like, the Harry Potter movies, or, like, a lot of, like, book to movie adaptations is that there's only so much time in a movie, and a book, if you were to actually transcribe the events of the book into a movie, it would take, like, sometimes 10 hours, and no one's going to sit down for a 10-hour movie. So, they want to break one movie into 2 parts so they can actually get most of the book. Unless you're going something else with this.
No, that's basically.
Oh, okay.
We can agree to disagree.
No.
The hero needs to show his strengths and weaknesses.
Okay.
Because if a hero is all powerful and not vulnerable to anything, that can be a little boring. So
I could think of 2 specific examples.
Yeah. My last one was don't add unnecessary fluff. Like, don't add like scenes which are not needed in the movie. Like some scenes are like, is this scene necessary to tell the plot? Then usually in movies, like one of their mottos is everything has to have a payoff.
There's a very specific director, I believe, that said that, or at least something to the effect of every scene should matter to the movie.
I agree with that, like, because unnecessary scenes, like, what was the point of that?
Can you think of any unnecessary scenes in this movie?
Not really unnecessary scenes, not signs. But maybe, I guess you could cut out a little action, but not be kind of boring, and it increases the scenes.
Like, there's not like a right or wrong answer to this. I'm legitimately curious if there is any.
Well, there was something, I can't remember what. It was not the language. It was a scene that was dragged out a little too long, I thought. But I can't remember what to call it.
Yeah, can you think of like the events of what was happening, or like who was there? Again, this is not like a right or wrong answer thing.
I can't remember what the scene was, but I think it was like one was too long. I think one part was, this is not the part I was thinking of, but like repeating it a little too many times, like the line when Batman was repeating her line over and over again. I think she repeated it a little too many times before Alfred said something. I think it could have been like 3 or 4 times and been fine.
Okay, he would have established what you needed. Okay.
Yeah.
Alright.
Instead of just beep, beep, beep. But that probably was trying to show something what I'm not familiar with.
Just missed it. Alright. Is that the end of your list?
Yep.
Okay. So, you approached this from a very different angle than I did. Which is fine. I'm not, like I said, I'm not looking for the right answer. I'm looking for your answer. What I wrote down, it's a very short list, actually. Good actor. So, they actually brought the dude from Twilight as Batman.
I didn't know. I've never watched Twilight, so I wouldn't know any. I have not seen any scenes.
A lot of people were kind of confused as to why they brought him in, but I thought he did like a fantastic job.
Yeah, he did. But he has to negative connotation.
Yeah, I had no idea this guy could act.
Apparently he can.
Yeah, I guess so. We saw him in the movie. I also went like very specific to like a superhero movie in general, not movies in general. Whereas it seems like on your list you listened to a lot of things that would be good for just any movie.
Yeah, right? That's what I thought you meant.
Okay. So specifically for superhero movies, I think it doesn't need to be based on any particular plot line or comic line, and I think it's actually better that way, specifically for movies, because of how movies work, that you don't do that. You just need to draw inspiration from it. You need enough things in the movie that you can recognize, like maybe some story beats, some, some maybe a plot that is similar to something in a comic. Enough that it's familiar to someone who doesn't actually know comics, but still maybe does its own thing. Not that it's a bad thing to adapt something directly from a comic, but it typically just doesn't work that well.
It can work. You just have to have like a good writer for it. I've seen people adapt the comics and like change it up a little and do it well. It just needs the right actor, not a person who wants to change, not a person who needs to understand what the original was trying to do and basically be able to interpret that. Because if you don't understand what the original was trying to do, it can not translate well. That's why the new X-Men show have to be a fan to write it. Like, not like know people who don't know what it is like, because you have to be able to interpret it. If you don't, it's not going to go well because some things don't turn out well. Like, you don't get the exact lore, especially if it's established lore already. If you're establishing and making a continuation on that, you want to know what you're talking about.
All right. Before I get to the go ahead.
You can add your own things. Just make sure you know what you're talking about and just not break canon on accident.
I don't know if I specifically agree with like breaking canon, but I see what you're getting at. Because like this, I'm pretty sure this movie breaks canon.
You mean DCEU is probably going to be rebooted anyway? Probably with by a Flashpoint again. So I'm not very big in DCEU. So
before I get to this next bullet point, actually, Batmobile. What did you think of it?
It was nice. I was a little sad about one thing. It doesn't have as many gadgets as in some other things. But now I'm like, I can live with it because the scene was so cool.
I think having it like the Batmobile of like, I forget what year they came out, but like, the old like super cartoonish Batman movies, like Mr. Freeze and people like that. I think having that Batmobile in this movie would make it just a little bit too cheesy. And I actually really like how like this Batmobile is very minimalist and sort of realistic. Aside from like the design of it, the exterior design of it, this is something that you could actually drive.
Well, you could drive it technically, but it's just, I would expect more security measures for like a millionaire.
Especially for the Batmobile. It doesn't have as many features, but...
No, usually some Batmobile features are like little traps if someone gets into the car sometimes.
And I guess also the jets on the back might prevent you from driving it, but...
Yeah.
So my next bullet point was, characters need to feel authentic and need to be comic enough. I don't think having them be quite one-to-one parallels of the comics is a great idea. Because some of those can be quite campy, especially like early Batman days. But they need to be comic enough.
Comic enough I can agree with. I have not read too many comics, but I've seen you can take personality traits from the comics and put them into your Batman.
Oh yeah, comic enough.
Yep. But you can't. You could improve on it to make sure you're still writing the same character. That's why some people are writing codes of what a Batman is. These are the traits Batman must have, like Spider-Man. The reason why you have seen Spider-Man like in so many movies and you can tell this is a Spider-Man. Spider-Man actually has a code of ethics and stuff, and a code of thing, which why Spider-Man does so well. He is always going to be similar because there's actually a written thing which you can't do with Spider-Man. He's always this person. That's why Miles Morales exists, because they wanted to try something new with Spider-Man. So that's why Miles Morales, which at the beginning wasn't actually very popular because he was literally just mainly copy Spider-Man, just a little different. And then now they changed him a lot in the movie adaptations and stuff like that, the new stuff. So that's why he got popular, because he became his own thing. And Spider-Man still has his code of ethics. I don't know if Miles Morales does. Yeah.
I mean, he probably does. It's just not as well known as Peter Parker. A very specific example is, so you mentioned, well, actually, I also know that Bruce Wayne is like a very charismatic, kind of outgoing guy. Cares about his father's legacy, tries to run the family business. All right. So that's cool and all. But I really like this Bruce Wayne. At no point in this movie did I feel that the person I was watching on screen was not Bruce Wayne or was not Batman. It passed the test. It was comic enough.
For me, for who's familiar with Bruce Wayne, I could get past it, but I had those Bruce Waynes separated while the Batman's similar. Because I've always thought Batman looked a little taller than Bruce Wayne for some reason. My brain was like not swapping them properly.
Mm-hmm.
Probably because I'm used to other Batmans. But it was well enough done.
Also, you need to have a recognizable setting and tone, which I think is
literally the whole movie is literally just Gotham.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to fuck that up. Not that I'm like a Gotham expert or anything.
Gotham expert? I don't think there is such a thing. Gotham has changed so much.
It feels like Gotham. It feels like a Batman movie. Speaking of feels like a Batman movie, I'm actually really glad that I have to go through the movies again, or the Marvelous Journey again, because hindsight is 2020. There's a okay, you've seen some Marvel movies, right?
Yep.
Okay. There's a very, very different tone that this movie has compared to like the Marvel movies that I just did not realize until my second viewing.
I know this because DC was going for a little darker tone.
Yes, it always has been.
Yeah, DC always has been trying to go for a darker tone. It's been like the main prerogative.
I've seen Man of Steel, and I think this movie does good by that philosophy so much better. I'm noticing now what people are saying about like, oh, how the Marvel movies are like trying to force comedy. I think there's like 2 moments specifically where I laughed in this movie. Mostly to do with the Penguin. It's like, I didn't realize until the second viewing just how much that changes things. And speaking of, I did a wiki skim on this movie in particular that kind of answers a few of the things that you wrote down in your notes. So, this movie is based on a few comic runs. And I believe it was called Batman Origins or something like that. It specifically depicts Batman in his early years. So this is not a very experienced Batman. You can kind of tell that in the movie, actually. I don't know if you remember, there's a scene where he's jumping off the roof and he has to like glide down, and he opens his parachute, and he opens it at a place that's maybe not the best, where he like kind of like hits the bridge and he just like eats shit on the ground.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking like, oh wait, that's weird. It's not a very Batman thing to do. But it makes sense now because this is based off of his very early years. He's a very inexperienced Batman. Also, he has not met the Joker yet. It's also based off of The Long Halloween. So that comic line had to deal with Calendar Man. I don't know if you heard of him.
I've heard of him. I've never heard anything more like, oh, this villain exists.
So Calendar Man's whole shtick was he killed people on holidays, and he always also left clues as to who he would take down next. They've essentially taken that idea and adapted it to the Riddler, but also gave him like more Riddler flair to it. Also, they went for a sort of political slant as to why he's actually killing people. There is one more comic that this is based off of that specifically has to do with Catwoman. So there actually is a comic line where Catwoman is the like sort of illegitimate daughter of Falcone.
I don't know much about him, so
yeah. So like that is actually somewhat canon. As canon as you can get when you have like so many continuities. It is also specifically, I believe it was like the director said that he wanted this to be like a more noir style film. You know, so Batman's actually a detective. He's actually going in solving crimes. It's a very gritty, kind of dark movie. And it fits that movie very well. There are sequels planned as well. I believe there's like 2 sequels in the works.
For the Batman?
Yes. This is supposed to be the start of a new universe as well.
Oh. Like they originally planned before they skipped ahead.
Yeah. I mean, this is a much better foundation though. So I hope they continue with it. I hope greed does not blind them. Oh, also, this movie is also based on another comic called Dark Victory. And I believe in that one, specifically, Riddler plots to blow up walls of Gotham to flood the city. But more importantly, it explores Batman as a character, as does this movie. What it means to be a hero. Whereas, like, initially he was vengeance, now he's a symbol of hope. I love it. Love this movie.
I can tell.
Yes. Oh, there was one note that I missed. So you think the Riddler did not figure out who Batman was?
Yes.
Okay.
Because he said Bruce Wayne, that's the only guy we didn't get.
So, based on, like, the wall that they went and investigated before Batman got called over to the, like, Riddler cell, I thought it was, like, pretty clear, like, oh, yes, I know who you are. Because, like, even on the wall, it was like, he circled Bruce Wayne out of the pictures. He was like, I know the real you. It's all these pictures of, like, Bruce Wayne, and then, like, oh, who's the Batman? And from what I understand, Riddler has a pretty big ego. He doesn't exactly want other people to know that he knows who Batman really is.
But from what I gathered, like, he said, like, I know your true face. You're the Batman, and basically stuff like that.
Oh yeah. So, like, that as well. Like, whereas I wear the mask to feel normal, I forgot exactly what it was, but he was essentially implying that he was, like I said in the beginning, we've been watching Batman this whole time. He's implying that, yeah, this is Batman. What you wear when you take off the suit is a mask.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's why I thought.
You put on a mask to appear normal.
Now I'm trying to think. Is there anything else we need to talk about?
Not that I can think of, unless you have something you wanted to get off your chest.
No, not really.
We're in agreement that this is a great movie then?
Yeah, we're in agreement in the great movie.
Alright.